Well, we finally have an answer as to what this amp stack was being used for when John had posted it to his Instagram story with the caption, "Can rock when called upon." This shot was really exciting because it meant that new music was coming from John, and with this ninth studio album taking forever, I'm sure you guys feel the same way I feel, where it's just been way too long since we've actually gotten new Mayor music. There was hope that this would mean that this would be something on his new record. However, it's actually from the F1 movie, the kind of lead single from the soundtrack, Drive, with Ed Sheeran, Pino Palladino on bass, Dave Grohl on drums, and then John playing the guitar, is really cool. And I'm a longtime F1 fan. So to see John having some involvement with Formula One, I think the movie's going to be really incredible, with Lewis Hamilton being, kind of the primary consult for making sure the movie's accurate to, racing and everything like that. It sounds like it's going to be really cool. But to know that this is actually what John was using for that song and for the tone he got on it, I think is really awesome. So let's dive in and refresh on the gear that John was using for this song. So the reason as to why we have confirmation that this is what John is using is it was posted to Blake Slatkin's Instagram story, who's doing work with John, I believe, on the new upcoming record as well. He posted some really great behind the scenes photos of John, like with Dave and Pino and everyone together, which is really awesome to actually see that. But to his story, he posted basically the exact same shot that John had posted, being like, this is the amp rig from that day, confirming what John was using. In terms of what we actually see here in the original video that I made, the Supro, I talked about being the one that is a bit difficult to actually identify just based off of this shot here, because there are a few things that fit the profile, the size, the Tolex, even, kind of color scheme and everything. From what we can tell, there are a few things that match up to this. The one that I believe it is the Comet, but it's impossible to tell. I know in the comments of the other video, there's some people who are saying it was just like a speaker cab, or might be something else, like even like the Supreme, or the Montauk was kind of the other one I thought it might be, but I don't believe the Tolex color matches. It looks like it's gray in this one that we see here with John, rather than the more blue shade of the Montauk. So I don't think it's that. I do think it's a Comet, but the point being, pretty much impossible at this point to know what it is. Again, in the comments, speculate down below what you think it actually is. But for now, we can only, guess as to what John was using. But the next amplifier is, one we've seen John using so much. It's that 50-watt Silverface Overdrive Special, ex-owned by Carlos Santana. This one's been seen lots with Dead & Company on the John Mayer solo tour. It's clearly one of John's current favorite dumbles, and one of his most used dumbles, actually, at this point in time. The next amplifier being a Soldano SLO100, which, funny enough, we've seen John use with Ed Sheeran in the past on the Late Late Show, so kind of just a cool consistency there with amplifiers that John has used with Ed Sheeran, kind of guest appearancing, playing guitar for him. This amplifier, I learned a little bit about in kind of diving into this amplifier a little bit more because of this particular photo. Now, this is a vintage SLO100. Now, the reason that you can tell this is originally I was a little confused because of the depth knob. I thought that was only something that the modern versions had, but actually that was an option on the vintage models that you could get a depth knob modded on. But there is actually 3 switches on the left side of the amplifier there, kind of where the input jack is. There's 3 switches on the modern version. So the fact that there are only 2 indicates that it is in fact a vintage SLO100. An amp as well we've seen John use in the past for Sob Rock, recording Last Train Home's solo with that amplifier and a Boss CE2. So pretty good choice as well for kind of the more rocky tones that John was going for this song. And then the bottom amplifier is a Marshall JTM45 Mark II. I still have to do the John Mayer Marshall amplifier history video. I just haven't uploaded in a while, obviously, on the channel if you've been checking it out in a while, but that's a video I have to make. But again, just another really great choice for a more rocky kind of tone for a song. Now, Drive, let me know in the comments down below what you guys actually think of the song. I personally really like it, actually. I think it's very catchy. The chorus especially, it's just a great song. The riff that John did is very, interesting, I found. Something you wouldn't really expect John to pull out in terms of, something he would play. But obviously, kind of, the teaser, "Can rock when called upon," for the amp stack, the tones he was going for, and kind of the process of helping to write with Ed Sheeran as well, they had something in mind that they were going for, and John was able to, kind of pull from that kind of, more classic, obviously rock inspiration for the guitar that he was playing and the tones that he got. The one thing I really wish, though, that the song had is a solo. I feel like it's the kind of song that could have had a really good solo after the second chorus, hit a bridge or something, go into a solo, back into like the last chorus and out. I think that would have been really cool to have gotten a solo with John using this amplifier rig and kind of channeling that more classic rock sound. It would have been so cool, because then when you just listen to the song, it's a lot of that same riff that you're hearing. There's not a ton going on. It obviously fits the purpose of the song, and I definitely think that's what John was going for. He was writing, the guitar lines, the melody, the riff to serve that purpose of the song. But I think it's one where a solo would have fit in and would have been really, really cool. Now, the one other thing that's cool about the shot that John had posted is the settings are pretty visible on the amplifiers, at least in the three that you can see that are front facing. With the SL100, the settings don't totally look like they would be what John would have used if you just look at like the preamp settings and the master settings where the knobs are. Like, normal channel is basically off. Like, both of those are, from what we can tell, this angle of the photo on 0, and it's set to the clean channel from what it looks like as well, like the crunch versus clean. So I'm not sure if these settings are just, they took a photo of it before they started dialing everything in, because the settings of the SL100, at least to me, don't make sense unless it ended up not being used. But that's just something I thought was kind of worth noting here. If anyone actually tried to zoom in on the settings, it's like, well, doesn't totally look like it's accurate as to what John might have been using. Even like the loudness 1 on the JTM is pretty close to 0. I'm not super familiar with that amplifier, though, with the way it's cable jumped and everything, if how that would need to be set exactly. But just something I wanted to mention that I was kind of curious, now hearing the song, going back and then looking at the settings on the amplifiers, it was just something I picked on that I did want to bring up in the video. Unfortunately, we have no other information in regards to the pedals or even the guitar that John was using in the studio for this song. I mean, pedals though, the sound that John was going for is definitely relying on the amps for that tone, not a bunch of overdrive pedals or anything like that. It'd be kind of counterintuitive to have a board and, John would be using his Klon and TS10 into these amps without, relying on them to get most of that character and tone. So I'd be willing to bet that what we're hearing is just the combination of these amplifiers together, maybe like the Platinum 594 directly into these amplifiers, and that's what we're hearing. That's what I would bet, at least, is probably something that was going on for this song. Otherwise, I really do like the track, though. I think the song is fantastic. I do think it would have been better had there have been a solo that John did in it, because I feel like he's slightly underutilized a little bit in terms of, just who you have on a song like this to just, obviously, like I've mentioned, he's serving the purpose of the song, but I just feel like it would have been a little bit more special if John did kind of let loose a little bit and do a solo. It would have been really, really cool. But I'm a massive fan of just the lineup of Pino on bass, which is really great. And then you have Dave Grohl guest appearancing on drums, something I just would never have thought we would have gotten. John and Dave collaborating on something. Yeah, it's just really cool to me as a longtime Foo Fighters fan as well, to see Dave, doing something with John. I just thought was really cool. Pino, obviously John's kind of long-term go-to bassist. I hope we hear him on the new record as well, because Pino's just the coolest guy. So to hear him, doing more music and hopefully touring again with John, I just think would be awesome. But yeah, this is, everything we know. I wanted to just kind of refresh and highlight the fact that we know what this rig was being used for. It's really cool. Let me know your thoughts on everything in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys on the next video.